Hello and welcome to the Out of My Oz Aussie Leader Leaderboard podcast. My name is Ben and I will be your host / narrator today. Before we begin, I must clarify that currently I am a Labour voter and do have a bias towards the Labour Party due to this fact, but I will be staying unbiased and impartial as much as I possibly can, despite, having my political leanings. You'll be seeing that through today's episode, as there are two losers who are part of the Labour Party in this current week. This episode of Aussie Leader Leaderboard is being recorded on the 12th of the 9th, 2025, and so therefore any major information that comes out after then is going to not be included or relevant, unfortunately. So this podcast is based on a series by TLDR News, who they weekly do a leaderboard of world leaders, and I was like, basically, what if instead of world leaders we just did Australian leaders, because Australian politics are interesting, to say the very least. There is a lot going on a lot of the time, and it is chaotic a lot of the time. So to basically do this, there is winners of the week and losers of the week. I will be choosing 3 winners of the week and 3 losers of the week each week. And then also there is an option for the audience to vote for someone who they believe is either a winner or a loser, and include that in the comments of why they believe the person is a winner or a loser. I will end up deciding whether or not I believe they're a winner or a loser. And then each week there will also be an ultimate winner or loser of the week within Australian politics. Now, it may not be because they're like a person, they're a loser, but more so they're just not getting what they want to go through or to happen, or things aren't looking like they're going their way. So this week's theme is actually about the housing bill, but you're going to find out very quickly that there is an exception to this rule, and that's why we're going to be starting off with Murray Watt. Murray Watt is a senator from the Labour Party who is the senator for Queensland. So there's multiple senators throughout the states, and there's about, I think, 6 in Queensland, and Murray Watt is one of them. Murray Watt is from the Labour Party, and he is from the Labour left. And so within each party, especially the 2 major parties, there are left and right-leaning factions. Left obviously lean more towards the left, right lean more towards the right. In the Liberal Party, there's moderates and conservatives, pretty much, or far right. And so each one has their own sorts of values that they value more or less. Labour left are usually a lot more socially left-leaning, whereas Labour right are a bit more fiscally conservative, for instance. Recently, Murray Watt has been criticising the Queensland government, which is run by the LNP, because of how states work. They're run by separate governments in Australia. And so he has been criticising the LNP for stopping environmental changes and renewable resources being implemented within the state. The Queensland government has been ignoring calls for creating new renewable energy within the state, coupling that with how recently Murray Watt has been trying to push forward more law reforms in order to keep the environment and making it so that renewable resources are easier to access per state. And so there are no-go zones and go zones. So basically people are just able to start building. They don't have to worry about all the legislation and getting all the paperwork in and all that, which is currently a big issue, not only in renewable energy, but also in housing, and also in many forms where basically bureaucracy is just stopping things from occurring. And so he's just making it so you can either not, or you can, or it's pending in certain areas that people are wanting to build renewable resources. But the Queensland government has basically been pushing back against him and pushing back against these law reforms. But it doesn't look like things are going in their favour. And at least how the mainstream media are talking about it, people are not happy with the Queensland government. Now, this is also quite a U-turn for Murray Watt, and is quite positive, I guess, in a sense, for his Labour constituents, because previously, in the start of this year, he had extended a gas shelf to run for a few more years, which was very unpopular because it was going to pollute more waters. It was going to give them access to starting new places, and a lot of people were not happy with him for that reason. Murray Watt is also arguing that the Queensland government is making it harder for them to reduce power bills and achieve zero emissions by 2050, which the Queensland government is still saying they want to achieve. Under his reforms, the government would be able to partner with states and territories to develop the regional plans, and these would feed into state planning laws, which would, again, feed into the no zones and go zones. Oh yeah, Australia is on its way currently as well to tracking to 82% clean power powering the grid by 2030, and 43% of that reducing in carbon emissions by the day. However, this is just for us in Australia alone and not within the world. Australia is still outputting a lot of resources to places like China and India and giving them coal and gas, in which case they will be emitting carbon and basically offsetting anything we do here in Australia. So yeah, that's why Murray Watt is a winner this week. He has been doing more reforming, and he has been pushing more towards protecting the environment and pushing for more renewable resources, which he initially said before doing the Northwest Shelf extension. And now it actually looks like since doing that, he is moving more towards being protective and change and reform and things like that. Kind of more so how the Albanese government talked, where they're both doing renewable resources, but also making sure that it is a safe and progressive changeover. Okay, so now we'll move over to our main story and our next winner. Our next winner is David Pocock. Now, David Pocock is a senator from Canberra, and he is an independent senator. This means that he does not sit with any party at all. And unlike how the American system works, he does not have to join a party. He doesn't have to be a Democrat or Republican or Labor or Liberal. He is just himself, and that's all he has to be. So David Pocock is a winner mostly because of this aged housing commission debate that's been going on within the Senate, in which the Labor government has basically had to admit that it's been failing in providing aged housing for people who are trying to retire or they're trying to live within their own home but are struggling due to health issues or just due to being elderly. And they had to admit that people have been dying just due to Labor's inability to provide fast and quick and easy access to aged housing care. David Pocock was able to push for a bill, and he was pretty much the main proponent alongside the Greens and alongside the Liberals, but he is truly the biggest winner from this because it was his amendments to the bill that were supported and pushed through the Senate pretty much unambiguously, pretty much fully supported. And even though there's technically most things within the government, like with normal housing and things like that, it doesn't exactly do much outside of provide funding for projects, but it does look like it's actually doing something. And it is a huge win for him because he's pushing through, he's the face, he's the main proponent, it's his bill, it's his amendments, and it makes him look competent and capable. Let's say he wants to start his own party or he wants to get more things. He's being seen as a leader. And it is a current issue that, is relevant, where a lot of people are talking about housing crisis issues, cost of living issues, feeling like the government isn't actually taking care of people or watching people, and them having to admit this means they also have to admit that they have been very hands-off and they haven't been paying attention to the real crises that are happening in Australia. They have a large majority and they should be able to push through anything they want to, but they have been struggling, at least in the area of housing, which has been a struggle for a long time in Australia. So it didn't just start with them, but it's something that does need improvement. Also relevant to this though, and the third and final winner for this week is Sussan Ley. Now, Sussan Ley should be a shock when it comes to being a winner. If you know anything about Australian politics, Sussan Ley should be at the bottom of this board. She should be the ultimate loser because she has been having a rough time since the election. Her party is dysfunctional. It still is. We're going to go into that later. But she has finally got her first political win. Now, Sussan Ley is the leader of the opposition and the leader of the Liberal Party. coalition. She is a moderate Liberal. Now, technically, she is a centre-right Liberal. So within the Liberal Party at one point, there was moderate, which is more American Liberal, centre-right, and then far-right, where the previous Liberal leader, Peter Dutton, came from. She is also the member for Farrer. Again, Sussan Ley's been struggling for a while. She's been a very ineffectual opposition leader, and her having a major win, like her having just a political win, is such a big step for her that I just have to give her the win for this week, because she's just been floundering and struggling, and so getting any form of win is amazing, despite her party trying so hard to shoot itself in the foot. Alongside this aged housing commission stuff, she has also started criticizing the government for its planned changes to the FOI Act. The FOI Act is the Freedom of Information Act, which gives journalists and the public more access to government documents to see what they're doing, check for corruption, all those things. And even though this is a good thing, it's good that, the opposition party is holding the current government accountable. It's not like a Liberal government would do any better. It's not like a Liberal government would totally want freedom of information. They would crack down as well. Scott Morrison, who was her Labour leader from her faction, had troubles with the Freedom of Information Act, and it got released for a little bit under Albanese, and now he's trying to crack down on it again. And so I really do not believe Sussan Ley truly cares that much about the Freedom of Information Act. Yet again, she gets the win for taking an easy W by saying trying to suppress things is bad. Yes, suppressing things are indeed bad. However, she is still struggling. She still has a long way to go to keep her party looking stable and looking competent and looking like she is a good leader, which I think she is struggling. She is steering a ship that is capsizing, but she is steering it. But why is it capsizing, you might say? Well, let's jump to the losers of the week. The reason the Liberal Party is capsizing again, it's hit many icebergs since the election, and the most recent iceberg it's hit, Jacinta Price. Jacinta Price was the Shadow Minister for Defence Industry and a Liberal senator for the Northern Territory. She is from the National Right part of the Liberal Party, but was a former Nationals Party member. Now, the Liberal Party is a part of a broader party called the Coalition, which has the Liberal Party and the National Party as one joint party because they are unable to rule just by themselves. They're both right-leaning. One's a bit more right-leaning than the other, and the Nationals are more right-leaning. Now, in the last election, Jacinta Price moved from the National Party to the Liberal Party, and a lot of people speculate that is because she has ambitions to become Prime Minister one day. Jacinta Price has caused a lot of issues in the Liberal Party recently for some comments she made about Indian Australians. Now, Australia at the moment is having a lot of problems when it comes to immigration. Talking points, I want to say specifically, not immigration, but the talking points around immigration, where there was a huge movement recently, a kind of protest that was all about Australian sovereignty and we need to lessen immigration, and that got taken over by neo-Nazis. And 2 Nazis got arrested. One of them fully went up to a premier during a meeting and just started yelling at them. There was a recent shooting by a sovereign citizen, which is a very, again, right-leaning movement. And so Jacinta Price saying that Indian Australians are only brought into Australia because they vote for the Labor Party is an astounding thing to say, especially when it's just not true. Just based on how Australian politics works, you don't really vote only for one party. You have to vote for multiple different parties in order to just have your vote occur, list your your votes in number one. So I could go number one Labor, number two Liberal, which if Labor doesn't win that seat, my vote would then go to the Liberal Party. And then if the Liberal Party loses that seat, it would go to my third one, pretty much. That's how it works. No matter what, even if Indian Australians voted for the Labor Party, they're also voting for other parties as well. And how Australian system works is not based on like race. Well, it is a bit, but it's not fully. It's more so based on economic values and income, because Labor is union-based and Liberals are more corporation-based. The interesting thing, though, as well, is that Indian Australians are usually more in the past seen as Liberal voters. I know that's how I grew up, knowing that a lot of Indian Australians vote Liberal, and a lot of like coal miners, things like that, they vote Labor. And so to insult another big major base, recently in the past election, they insulted Asian Australians and they lost a lot of seats that are predominantly Asian community seats. And a lot of Indian Australians are now going, I'm not supporting the Liberal Party unless we get an apology from Jacinta Price. So it just feels like she's shooting her party in the back, and it's showing the obvious splits in the coalition, whilst also having the fighting about net zero. Now they're fighting about who is and isn't a valid Liberal voter, who isn't important to the party. And so it's very fascinating to watch, but I feel for Sussan Ley as she, again, is struggling to control this shift of her party towards more right-leaning aspects. And she has to lean into that just to keep her votes, because recently, when she got voted in, she only won by 3 votes against a right-leaning candidate. And they lost the election because of this same right-leaning rhetoric. The main reason Jacinta is on here isn't for her comments, but the aftermath of her comments. I did originally put her on here because of these comments, because of the controversy it caused, and because of how it looks. But the main reason now she's on here is she's no longer the shadow minister for defense industry. She has been kicked to the backbench and is no longer allowed to talk on the front bench after she said she didn't say anything. She was unable to say that she supported Sussan Ley as the leader of the party. She was completely unable to say that she believed in her leader. She supported her leader. Her leader was the future of her party. She was unable to support her. And so therefore, she cannot represent that party. She does not support how the party is going, where it is going. It's shocking. It just shows that she has 2 core values. Like, her core values are hers, and she is unwilling to shift. She is unwilling to change. She will say the things she says, and she will not apologize, which is very Trumpian. But Australians don't really like Trump that much. Like, some Australians do, but majority of Australians don't like Trump. So that's how things are. I'm interested to see who replaces Jacinta Price on the front bench. I'm going to assume it is someone from the more moderate section of the party, because I think Sussan Ley wants some more support. Or maybe she's going to bring someone on who she thinks would vote for Angus Taylor, so instead they would vote for her, and her go, hey, listen, if you support me, I will support you in future, pretty much. But Sussan Ley, not having a great time, but Jacinta Price definitely not having a great time right now. Now, despite all this, despite Jacinta Price taking up a lot of focus away from Labor, there are still Labor losers from this week. The key one being Sam Ray. Sam Ray is the Minister for Aged Care and Seniors. He is the member for Hawke, and he is a part of the Labor right. The reason Sam Ray is on here is because of this aged care housing packages and how they were forced through, and they made him look inexperienced. He is quite young. He's about 38, so that's quite young in Australian politics. He basically had to be instructed on answers or what to say or what to do during a press meeting by a senior member who was in charge of him pretty much. And it just made him look like he was struggling under the pressure. And a lot of people see him as a successor or a protege to the current Deputy Minister, Richard Marles. And watching someone who isn't confident in what they're doing or taken aback by, questions, very simple questions from the press gallery is not the greatest look. It makes you look weak. It makes you look like you don't know what you're talking about and that you shouldn't be in that job, especially having your superior basically have to talk to you. It's not great. It's definitely not great for him. Aged care is important in Australia because as more Australians retire, and a lot of retired Australians have a lot of liberal income wealth, or they're being affected by things such as the superannuation tax, and they're more affected by Labor policies. So this isn't looking great for the Labor Party, but especially isn't looking great for Sam Ray. Finally, unable to escape, even though he does technically deserve to be at the top of the list, is Anthony Albanese. Despite Anthony Albanese's many wins since the election, because this is my first episode, he has to start off with a loss. Anthony Albanese is the current Prime Minister of Australia. He is the leader of the Labor Party, he is a member of the Labor Left, and he is the member for Greynalda. Now, Anthony Albanese has been under some pressure recently, especially because the reason he's under pressure is because of his Freedom of Information Act changes that he wants to make, which would, again, suppress the press, and it would make it so that the government can be more secretive. A secretive government means it can be more corrupt, and I don't think Anthony Albanese wants that scandal. Once a government is seen to be corrupt, they kind of fall apart, especially in Australia. He's also been having these issues with the aged housing care, but he's also started moving towards corporate tax reforms, which seem to benefit corporations. And again, a lot of the Labor supporters are becoming dissatisfied with the fact that it feels like the Labor Party is moving towards the right more so than moving towards the left, which the country is shifting towards. At least economically, we're moving rightwards, whereas socially, people are moving leftwards, wanting greater reforms, wanting housing to be fixed, wanting cost of living to be fixed. And it feels like they're not listening and they're just listening to big business in a very American kind of way. The government has also been stricter on immigration recently. This is probably due to the anti-immigration marches, but it is important to note that the anti-immigration marches were less popular than the marches for Palestine. They are less popular than the marches for Palestine, which is astounding that the government is falling to pressure from the right, but not really falling to pressure from the left. In fact, there is a committee that includes Free Labor senators that have warned the government that it did not sufficiently justify laws that removed the requirement for non-citizens to be afforded procedural fairness when they face deportation to a third country. This is concerning that even within their own government, they are being criticized. They're being criticized on multiple things. They've been criticized on Palestine. They've been criticized on this anti-immigration bill, and they're being criticized externally as well. And the government needs to start, in my opinion, focusing on what the people actually want and not what they want or what's easiest for them and easiest to please the corporations. But we are in capitalism, and therefore corporations do kind of make up what happens and what goes. So who is the ultimate winner and loser for the week? Well, before we talk about that, let me remind you to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video so far. As you can see, even though I am a Labor supporter, I still will give wins to people who are not Labor, and I will still give losses to people who are from Labor, and justify the reasons as to why I believe they are winning and losing. Also, make sure that you leave in the comment who you believe is winning or losing for the week. And if you write a little description on why you believe they're winning or losing, that can make my job on researching about that situation a bit easier, especially since a lot of Australian politics aren't as easily accessible as they are in places like America. The ultimate winner of this week is between Murray Watt, David Pocock, and Sussan Ley. Now, I have to give the ultimate win to David Pocock. It is undeniable that a win for an independent is huge. It is, again, seen as his amendments. It is seen as his changes to the bill. It is seen as his argument that he brought forward to the Senate, even though it was a collective bargain from the Greens, the Liberals, and him. He is pointed out as the main contributor. The Greens have been basically ignored. It's been Liberals and him pretty much, even though the Greens were a part of that. No one's really been talking about the Greens in this situation. They've been talking about the Liberals and David Pocock. Sussan Ley is just having a bit too, like, if Sussan Ley's party didn't implode again for another week, she would have been the ultimate winner, because again, she's having a win and things were looking good for her, and then Jacinta Price had to stick her foot into it and make Sussan Ley have to back herself into a corner and ask for support. On Murray Watt's hand, he's got a pretty solid win, but it's not looking like it's going anywhere at this exact moment. However, he has more wins because there are more Labor governments within the states, and therefore he is able to pass laws easier, and that's why there are these conflicts in Queensland specifically that are run by the LNP. In terms of losers for the week, we have Anthony Albanese, Jacinta Price, and Sam Ray. I feel like this one is pretty obvious, especially about how much I talked about them. Jacinta Price is the clear, obvious loser of this week. Again, she was kicked from the front bench of her party, got herself into controversy. She made her party look bad. She made herself look bad. She made her leader look weak, which made her leader have to push her out. And she just looks unstable, and I don't see her getting support from her party anytime soon. Again, she's going to lose voters from the party, from those who are more left-leaning, because they will be like, I don't want that. I don't want that in my government. So Jacinta Price is the loser. And this is despite the fact that Anthony Albanese has all these losses going against him. He's got his own party criticizing him. He's got media criticizing him for the Freedom of Information Act. He's got pretty much all parties criticizing him for the aged housing care issues, and also the general public for the new corporate tax reforms. But Jacinta Price just had to decide that this week was the week that she wanted to be racist. And Sam Ray, he gets away with, I don't know, being young and not knowing how to face arguments. Again, this is 1 week of Australian politics, and if you don't think that's wild, I don't know what to tell you. This is probably the most normal week we've had in a while. We've had race protests. We've had a major MP kicked from their office for being racist. We have the government infighting. We have the other government infighting. It's been an interesting week. And so if you've enjoyed, again, please like and subscribe. I hope to see you around next week for more fun, where I don't know what we'll get into, but we're going to find out eventually. And if you have an idea of who you would like me to talk about in terms of Australian politics, it can be state governments, it can be mayors or things like that. I don't care. I will do the research. Just help me out by giving me a little bit of details about why you believe that person is a winner or a loser for the week. This has been Out of My Oz. I'll see you next time.